All right.
All right, good morning. The time is now 11:03 a.m. We are here for a committee of the whole. It is Thursday, September 7th, 2023. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara. Here. Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Kelly.
Aye. All are present. We have one item on this committee of the whole today, and it is the proposed revisions to the Board of County Commissioners Rules of Order. Ms. Trent will start with a presentation. Our Chief Legal Counsel, Ms. Trent.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. This is a report back from August 3rd related to potential revision of for your rules of order, specifically as it relates to executive sessions and the attorney-client privilege, confidentiality, adding items to the agenda, and requests for information. Just to recap, back on August 3rd of 2023, we met in Cal. And at that time, we talked about some additions and potential revisions to the Board of County Commissioner Rules of Order. Specifically, there were directions to staff to come back with a definition of confidentiality and disclosures from executive session, and also disclosure of information of attorney-client privilege. Additionally, potential revisions to the Rules of Order, and I was directed to bring back 3 different options, not really getting detail of what those options would be, but to figure that out. I took it upon myself to meet with each of you individually, except for one of you, but I did receive some feedback in writing. In that particular meetings, I basically asked open-ended questions as to what you wanted and what you thought about it. Essentially, there were about 5 different options that I bring back to you. And thank you, Commissioner Fast, for our discussion subsequently. But there were 5 options. One was, which we discussed in the CAL back on August 3rd, that was to meet on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis where commissioners at the conclusion of business could discuss items to set for a future meeting. The questions that arose during the CAL on August 3rd and just talking it through was how would we prioritize those as they would come in if you came in on a monthly, and who would prioritize it. So it had some issues of how that would be managed, if you will, if you were to have one meeting a month where you talk about, does anybody have items? Because you would have to have some prioritization. How would those items be managed? Would that be by county manager or staff? So that comes with it another staff involvement from a different level of managing those projects. In addition, there's been discussion of what about if we had 3 members that would come together and indicate that you wanted to add a future agenda. Well, this is difficult in Kansas because of COMA and serial meetings, and with 7 of you, if you were to go to a 4th one, and then they said, no, you're taking votes and talking about the issue outside of the meeting, gets us a little nervous with COMA, so that option probably isn't a good avenue as well. The other that was brought about is that the BOC members would discuss the items for a future agenda in commissioner comments and attempt to get consensus with no vote. That was discussed at the August 3rd. Subsequently, I've had more discussion with Commissioner Fast, as well as she directed to me to a former chair who had operated under those items. The problem that may present is there's no information at that level. So if you had commissioner comments, first of all, we'd have to change the definition. But there would be potential that we've had no transparency as to what you're discussing, no understanding of what would be brought forward. So that comes with some issues and questions. The other was brought forward in August 3rd, and also from my meetings and talking to individuals, is just to meet with the chair. If the chair approves it, that item can be added on the agenda. That exists today in your rules. Doesn't spell it out completely. I think it could be clarity on that, but that does exist. The question becomes, what if the chair says no? And that brings us to why this item was brought up. The other option was that you can, and I believe Commissioner Fass has brought this forward as well, that the BOCC member could advise an item for a future agenda in commissioner comments, and then submitting written requests to the clerk for approval to add on to a future agenda, which we'll get into. So those basically are 5 options. And looking throughout the United States in different city governments, county governments, pretty much there's some hybrid or some way that that is laid out. I have put in, I think for this meeting, I have put forward a 2-page or a 3-page document. And what I'm going to do is kind of go through 3 options now. I've boiled it down to and what that language would look like because I was directed to bring 3 options. So the first option, which would be leaving the language as it is right now in your rules of order, but simply removing that you cannot debate the item when it comes up for the agenda. So let me recap what the current process is or isn't so everyone is understanding that. A member could put in writing to the clerk no later than the close of the business of Friday before a regular business meeting that they want to have an item added to a future agenda. Before that time, they need to submit information pertaining to that. I'm also reviewing it to see if it conflicts with any item that the board had previously considered and looking at whether it is business before this county board. At that point, if there is a determination, then that's brought forward immediately. So if you come in before the meeting before, it has to go on the Tuesday to the chair to be considered and part of your meeting and voting. That's what we're currently doing. The only difference is we don't debate the discussion of the items, and then it would be determined by the staff in the future to add those to the agenda item. And on Friday every week, you're getting an email telling you about that agenda item, where it is in the process and when it'll be back. So right now, the concerns I would bring forward is how this process is just awkward. It's not to meet these deadlines that are self-imposed. It comes on this dead, and then it goes immediately to the Tuesday, and then it has to be emailed out to the commissioners. It's just hard to meet those deadlines, and also attempting to work with the commissioner to get the information necessary to understand the suitability, and also that you have that information for your consideration, especially when there's no debate, so that everyone understands what you're doing. And it's the first time you're hearing the information, so you haven't had an opportunity to process or to understand that. So this option, as it is right now, I would submit to you, has some real challenges. And that's why we're here today, is because of that. And I'll go through the options, and then we can ask if there's any questions. The second option is what I included in your, for your review that I put out on Tuesday. This one pretty much, and this was from listening to each of you and what you wanted, and kind of trying to combine your wants and needs into one document, if you will, like a hybrid, so that there were various options to you in adding an item to agenda. So in this manner, you would have 2. You could, 1, go meet with the chair and provide the details for the reasons for your request, if any, and you need to, and from talking to everyone, I came about with strategic objective or fiscal goal, that you can relate it to something of a priority of the commission or fiscal goal is related. And then if the chair would approve, then the item would be added to a future agenda. So this method doesn't seem like it's labor intensive. It's more encouraged that if you talk to the chair, you may get the item added. The other option then, or you can advise the board during your county commissioners' comments that it's your intent to submit something in writing for consideration of the board in the future. Then you will provide sufficient information about the item, including any necessary supporting documentation, outlining the impact to staff to bring that item back. So that requires you're going to have some discussion with the county manager or staff about what that item would involve to bring that back for a future. Does it meet a strategic objective or priority of the board or fiscal goal? And if it is, and if not, indicating such. And then once that written request is provided, then that would go on the board's agenda for their consideration and potential approval to add that item to a future agenda. As you will note, there are no deadlines in this one. And the purpose of that is those deadlines were really restrictive in getting the information and making sure it meets the criteria of bringing it forward. Also, you'll note, trying to get, after I spoke with all of you about content and what we've been able to observe over the past few months of how this was working, there was a need to determine what items would fit under our strategic priorities and goals. This makes it important when you're doing budget, when you're having your budget retreat, that you're making sure that the goals are being indicated in direction to the county manager, because if that's something that you want to bring forward in the future in your budget retreat, then that should be something that you are bringing forward that is in line with those goals and fiscal impact. So this, I feel, in speaking with people, helps us to keep us on task and prioritizing items. It also provides an opportunity for review of these items to make sure that now we have a list after we've watched, a few to see what are coming forward, to make sure that they are related to the operations of county government. And at times, I will tell you, I work with the commissioners to make sure that they're on topic and related, because their voice, they want to have this heard in for consideration and exploring if this board can do any action to bring about what they're wanting to bring forward for the agenda. Again, the fourth clause remains the same, that you would keep the commissioners apprised of the status of the item. I think that's been working well to keep you apprised every Friday where we're going and where we are in the process. So the third option was kind of a hybrid again, and this one is that a member would seek approval of an item to a future agenda by advising the Board of Commissions in your public comments. And then you will have to have all the information, which this is going to become a whole meeting agenda item discussing it in your commissioner comments, which are usually at the end of the meeting. But you would bring that forward, discuss it, and if they were able to determine consensus, then at that point, that would bring it on to a future agenda. So you wouldn't take a vote, because technically in a commissioner comment, you're not voting by definition of your current rules. So if you chose these options, also then adding the same hybrid, if you will, what can be considered during that. So there would have to be some communication with staff prior to you presenting it to commissioner comments. And the rest of it would be similar to the other second option. If you picked option 2 or 3, we would have to amend what we can talk about in commissioner comments, because to remind you, this time, and this has been in rules of order since the genesis of these from 2009, is the time is set aside to allow members to comment on matters related to business and operations of the county government, including board and commission liaison assignments. If, depending on if you are adding these discussion items, they would have to be amended accordingly for option 2 or 3. So I'll take a pause at that point as to that topic before I move on to the next topic about requesting information not readily available.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Trent. We're going to take some questions. Commissioner Ashcraft, I know you asked for a point of clarification, so I'm going to let you go first.
Please, thank you. In option 2, you refer to strategic objectives. Is that the same as the board priorities?
Yes.
Okay, because the county does have a strategic plan, which is quite dated now. It's over 10 years old. You're not referring to that.
No, and I would apologize. We would amend that language to be priorities.
And those are pretty narrow by most definitions, I would submit, compared to the strategic plan. So I just wanted to understand. And what is the operational definition of consensus?
That's a good question. It isn't taking a vote. It's just getting that a majority, not even a majority. It's that there is an indication that there's no individual, and help me out, that is actually trying to oppose it, that there's a strong opposition to the discussion of this item, but more, you're just trying to get everyone to agree, to just let us take a look at it. You're not voting. And we're used to voting out here on the dais, so this is a very, interesting way to approach it. But it's worked in the past, I understand. I actually spoke with the former chair who indicated that it worked very well for her.
I think it highlights one of the problems with trying to seek consensus outside of a vote on Commissioner O'Hara?
Thank you. So in all the options, we are to only bring agenda items that we want added that align with the board priorities.
Or fiscal goal, a fiscal goal.
So you're going to limit my opportunity if I have something outside of those priorities you're going to limit my opportunity to bring forth items, that they're not tailored to the board priorities?
Chair, if I may, actually, I had a great conversation with Commissioner Fast on this, kind of when talking with her and kind of outlining that. And without getting into what's been brought forward and everything, just to use an item, let's say that you want to pass out free bracelets of chief wear. Let's just say that was an item that you want to bring forward to have an agenda in order for the county to start purchasing these bracelets on game day, in order for us to show our pride for our community and our chiefs. So if that item was to be brought forward at that point, it would have to relate to somehow the strategic goal of that you've determined in your board retreats, which puts a high priority on those board retreats, that you're committed to what's going on and what's being brought forward, but also fiscal. So that would be a fiscal impact to the budget. How much would that cost that we're passing out those? So that would be related to the fiscal impact and how it was paid for, and if you wanted to bring it forward. So that is a fiscal goal, or someone was bringing it forward and you didn't agree, that may be how this would get on. Maybe a bad example, but I'm trying to show without getting into you and singling you out, Commissioner O'Hara, because that's not my intent.
No, single me out, doesn't matter. Follow on.
All right, then I will.
Okay.
The porn let's talk about the mental health effects of porn. Mm-hmm. Okay? Let's talk about that.
Okay.
I have done my best in the way the current rules are to try and figure out how that affects county. And I have done a very good job in trying to write your motions so that when you bring it forward, that it's related to county. But what you're attempting to say is that our library is publishing books, and you brought it up today, that are putting out for books that you don't agree with. So you want this board, BOCC, to take action. The question becomes, does this board have the authority by these objectives we have here to actually do anything about it? And if they don't, then that's not something we would bring forward.
Well, actually, mental health is a huge issue, and it was not specifically focused on any branch of our county government. It was to be a study. In 2017 and 2018, the Kansas House and then the Kansas Senate, they passed resolutions on their concern of pornography and on mental health.
So you're asking the board to pass a resolution about their concern about
No,
porn?
I was asking a study session to bring in the mental health, and I was very specific about that. But that, be that as it may, I object to, if anything, if any issue, if you have an agenda item that is addressing any element of county business, that's what we're here for, all county business, not just the board priorities. So I think it just, if it's relevant to county business, and the elected officials here are going to monitor whether something goes forward or not. And if you get if you have an agenda item that you want to add, if I have an agenda item that I want to add, I have to have 4 votes. If I don't get 4 votes, it goes away.
Well, that's why we're here today,
Right.
Chair, is to find a process to bring forward a request because it takes up staff time
But-
to handle.
Thank you. And so let me dive into that, and taking us to the 10,000-foot level instead of the minutia of previous motions that have been brought. We're here because this is a new process. This has not been part of our prior process. And so we're trying to find a way to make this work to accommodate all of the commissioners. Now, there are multiple problems with our current process. We all recognize that, and staff is telling us there is a problem with our current process. There is a huge impact on staff time and bandwidth based on this. Staff shouldn't be having to write your items, shouldn't be having to write your motions, but they're doing that. There's also a lack of understanding from commissioners when these items come before us. And to the point that is now being raised, it allows for issues that really do not have county government import to be hijacked into our meeting. And while you can find a scintilla of overlap, I think that by the process we have now, it allows that to then come before us in a matter that brings up rhetorical items that have no real county impact. And we have discussed what are our priorities collectively. And to somewhat disagree with Michael's comment, I don't think they're as narrowly tailored as you might have addressed them. I think health and safety is a broad topic. I think taking care of our staff is a broad enough topic through which you should be, and then fiscal impact is a topic in which you should be able to have any item of good faith come in within the proposal that is here. So while, I was in the minority in determining whether or not we even move forward with this process, and I understand that there is a desire by a majority of this board to have a process. The current process is not working, and we need to be willing to address that and find a way that this is not going to continue to burden the staff. Commissioner Allenbrand?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's broken. So I've served on many different boards, and I think each one of them are a little different. And I've been in the office, and I've seen, I call it the office, so we're in the office. I think there's a show on The Office, but anyway, I see how much the staff is scurrying around trying to get things together. And, if you put a dollar amount, we're here to, let's talk about the budget. So if we want to make changes to the budget, let's start earlier. Why do we have to be in here and ridicule people because the staff and at the very last minute? So let's start now working together as this is supposed to be a nonpartisan group, which is not turned that way. We're making it about politics, and that's my personal opinion. There's vendettas going on here. And it's frustrating to me that we have to sit here and that we're in argument all the time. I feel like, there is huddling going on to determine how we do things. So I would just like us to take a look at, if you're going to come up with a budget, let's come up with it early. Let's talk about it. And there's some things I've agreed with Commissioner O'Hara on books. But to me, there's a process. There's a process of writing a complaint letter to those, to the library, and to come here every week and discuss it, I wish we spent more time out in the community if you disagree. I have to say, there was a book I disagreed with, and my daughter-in-law put me in my place. So anyway, you know, I think that's a personal preference to go out and do that. I have never, I don't know why everybody has such difficulties getting a meeting with the chair. If you just call him on his cell phone and he'll call you back. I don't understand why there's so much dissension up here. And I wish we could just all work together and come up with something, then to overload the Linda and what she's doing and the staff trying together. I don't think any of us realize here what goes in to our agendas. And, trying to, you talk about it takes a majority vote, that's true, but if you're provided more information, maybe you might be able to get that vote instead of not providing the information ahead of time. So
We
those
weren't
are my
allowed to
comments.
give-
I'm just,
Thank
We
you.
were not
Let her
allowed
finish
to
her
give-
comments, Commissioner O'Hara. Thank
We were
you
not
very much.
allowed to give
Commissioner
information.
O'Hara, let her finish her comments.
you.
Let's be professional.
well, and I've never known not to be allowed, so I don't understand that. And, I've been called names because, supporting my fellow other commissioners. But, and this is supposed to be nonpartisan. It's supposed to be able to work together as a team. We may not always agree, but it's okay to disagree. So those are my comments. I can't, I see what the legal staff, I've been here for a short time, what is going on in our office, and it's the name calling, the ridicule of the staff, even commissioners, to me, it's just gone to an all-time low. So I've never seen anything like it in my life, and I'm not young. So that's my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In thinking through this conundrum, a couple of things that are priorities for me, whichever process we end up using, is first of all, I need to have information prior to something being brought up. For example, if something's just brought up in commissioner comments, I need to have that ahead of time. And and I think both the board and the staff need time to consider whatever's being requested. I really don't, I'm very hesitant to agree to have something during commissioner comments because my fear would be we'd end up being here for hours. And it changes what commissioner comments really are. I also have great concern about the amount of time staff is putting in to help somebody prepare their motion or their request. To me, if a commissioner has something they want to bring forward, we need a process to bring it forward in their own writing, with their own research, whatever that might be. And then if the rest of the commission agrees, yes, we want to put this on our agenda, at that time it might be appropriate to work with the staff. But that's a lot of staff time for something that has not even been approved for consideration. And finally, this should not be an opportunity for using staff time to research unrelated political issues. And that's why I know we have these three options, but something we might want to consider is some form of maybe adding an agenda item that where people, if the commissioners are expected to provide information to all the commissioners ahead of time, and then have an agenda item that just says items requested for future agenda. And at that point, we could discuss that. We can say, Commissioner Myers is presented, he sent this out to all of you that he wants to have, everybody has to wear Chiefs gear every single day of the season, for example. But he would have sent something out ahead of time explaining why he wants that, without staff having to do that research. And then at that time, the board can vote, yes, we do want to have that on a future agenda. That way, it cuts the staff totally out of this process until the board has said, yes, we want to pursue this. I don't think it's fair to staff or to the rest of us to not have that information directly from the commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner Ashcraft and Commissioner Fast.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, to
Oh,
Michael,
sorry.
then you. Sorry about
oh,
that.
sorry.
Well, have you spoken yet?
No, but
You go ahead,
Go
'cause
ahead,
I-
Commissioner Fast. All right, thank you for your courtesy, sir.
so the option, the 3 BOCC members, when I was on city council, that was before Chairman Kelly, we had a very divided council. And I was trying to bring both sides together. So I brought forth that 3 members could submit an item, and it totally changed the dynamics of the council. Because when you share power versus having a very top-down patriarchal form of power, then it created trust. And new ideas came forth, and it took us to a good era when Mayor Kelly then took over by having more decentralized power, which is, as a social worker, I've seen that all my life. And that's why I brought this forward. Last year, I brought forward to the commissioners to have a government relations and I brought forward to have a housing coordinator. Those were all ideas I brought forward. And my first year brought forward to have a housing task force. This year, I did, to look at all our committees. Working on to have a market in the basement, to have art in the first floor. And those just aren't my ideas. I want the option to bring forth the great ideas of my district and to present to all of you in an open meeting and to the public. Rules are for the public as well as for us, and the process is for the public, for us. And these rules should, they should be, next chairman could be totally different value based. And I saw that with my different mayors. One wanted to get rid of our sustainability committee. We had another who let's invest more in it. So, these rules, need to go between the ages. One of the things I don't like is the unreasonable interferes with the ability of the county. That is so value laden. That one chair could say, well, a sustainability committee unreasonably interferes, and the next one says it's a great aspect to have in our county. But what Commissioner Hanslick was saying, I think, in social services, we have intake processes. And the person, we can't serve you. And this needs like a first step by, what I wanted, the consensus part is I come to you and say, I think this room should be pink. And then the chair says, well, how do you all feel about it? And everybody's like, no, everybody shakes their hand. And so then I don't take staff time to get the costs of making this room pink, to get the fiscal note. And a consensus, we do that in executive session. We do it if we want to break for lunch. And that's how Chairwoman Annabeth Surbaugh did it for years. And so we need that intake process, whether if the group even likes the idea before then I go to staff and get all that information. So I would just ask for that step, like I brought up about the Artem first floor. Do I even go forth on it? And the church can just say, should Becky go forth and get more information? We don't have to take a vote. It just says, do you want Becky to get more information? And then some of you can shake your head, and some of you don't say anything, and the chair determines whether there's a consensus. It's not that hard. We do it in executive session every time we meet, is determine consensus. So that's the only thing I think it needs to be added, because that will reduce staff time. It would reduce my time. I don't want to spend hours figuring out if this, the costs, if this room should be pink, doesn't meet our priorities. If everyone we love this yellow, which I hate the yellow, but in this room. But that just to have, and I think that's what you were kind of saying, Commissioner Hanslick. No? Oh, I thought you meant more of a first step before we get into all of the, I mean, because that's a lot of staff time, and just to know if that idea is even worth pursuing, which is what you did with the tax program. You introduced it, and then you went and got more information.
I know you were, briefly, I didn't know if Michael.
Oh, no, I think you're partly where I'm coming from, but I, rather than just having it brought up in a meeting, I would like to have some information prior, because, at least to me, the cost of something and some background is important, like, for example, repainting this room. I don't want to be caught off guard and have to make a decision before I've had a chance to really consider it.
So maybe a brief amount of information, and then get.
And that's the idea I'm
okay.
proposing, is if somebody has something they want to be considered by the board, they prepare something, not the staff, the commissioner prepares something, and maybe through the clerk sends it out to all the other commissioners, and then at an upcoming meeting, that's when then it could be brought up at that time under that request for future agenda items.
Chair, I think they're describing option 2.
Right.
Option 2 would be that you would bring it forward in your commissioner comments that I'm considering this. And at that point, if you'll be able to tell by the room, just like we do with consensus, if that's an issue, you'll hear, people will probably talk about it. And if that's the case, then you can, if you feel that there is positive, then you would bring it forward, to staff to add it to a future agenda item for a vote.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut.
Yeah, so option 2 does cover that, I believe.
So what I think, and I appreciate Commissioner Fast's comments about Roland Park and the good work that was done there. I think having an opportunity for commissioners to be able to get something on the agenda was used sparingly, but it was valued. And so going through this process, I think is warranted. And I think the way that number 2 lays out gives you all of those options by bringing it up during commissioners' comments. And, all due respect to how things may have gone 13 years ago, I don't think opening up commissioner comments to a discussion on the items is worthwhile, because it's not transparent to the people who may be passionate about that item. It's not always apparent to the commissioners of what's going to be discussed. So by stating an intent, though, in a commissioner's comment, it allows then an opportunity for continued conversation with some folks who might feel just as passionate about the item. And to fast track it, it allows what already exists, and I appreciate the recognition of, codifying the existing process, is that you can come to the chair, and I invite conversations with all of you about items to consider putting them on to the agenda. But then in that language, there's that "or" there, so if we don't agree, that is not the preclusion of the process. But you can, after bringing it up in a commissioner comment meeting, then submit, as Commissioner Hanslick has sought, that written request to the clerk, and therefore our commissioners would have information so that they're not flying blind. And then there'd be an opportunity to have some questions or discussions when this item then can be brought forward to the whole board. I think that's the most transparent and cost-efficient way to do this. So I appreciate Ms. Trent putting that together.
Chair, if I could add on to what you're saying, there is another method buried within this option, is that a member could go to you, you decline to put it on, then they can start the next process.
Exactly.
To get it on.
Right.
All right, Commissioner Ashcraft, you've been patient. Thank you very much. And then Commissioner Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are several points of debate floating at the dais now. I would just offer a couple of initial observations. And to your original retort to my assertion, I wanted to let you know, I appreciate the disagreement in terms of my perspective on board priorities versus strategic perspectives. And I understand what you're saying. When I hear that and have the discussion, that's something we should be able to debate and come to a mutual understanding on. Because like the board priorities for me are fairly narrow and fairly short-term versus when I hear the term strategic, I think of the strategic plan that the county did that was quite inclusive. It's dated now, and I'm not pivoting to that, but it shows a strategic perspective. So when this is stated as strategic objective, it is confusing. We need to have that understanding of what that format is and what that can be, and how that can be used. So I disagree with your disagreement, but I respect what you're saying in terms of how we frame this, because that then becomes the problem when we try to put rules together of what it means and how it's interpreted. And the legal counsel is new, so she may not even have been aware of that strategic plan, but I know the county manager is. And as I recall, that was going to be a challenge, a process that we would engage in with the new chair. So congratulations, you're the new chair, but that has not been broached with the commission, and we don't need to get into it. But now that you've reminded me, thank you, Ms. Trent, I may raise that issue again. A second point, though, if I may, Mr. Chair, part of the challenge that I think we've had, even before your chairmanship, was how to deal with cold motions or pop-up motions. And I would suggest to you, for me, it became problematic overnight during COVID, during the spring of 2020, when there was a pop-up motion to implement the mask mandate in Johnson County. That motion was literally given to the commission 5 minutes before the meeting, and we were being compelled to vote on it. And that set a very unfortunate precedent. Now, that doesn't mean it didn't happen before, but it has kind of fallen out from there to be somewhat aggravating. I would suggest that I'm not uncomfortable with pop-up motions, but just because it pops up, and I'm more than willing to discuss it, and I think Commissioner Myers and I have had this conversation, to not be able to ask questions and clarifying, to vote for or against something, because all due respect to Commissioner O'Hare or Commissioner Fast or even myself, being able to craft a motion that is truly understandable and hits the intended mark is a challenge. And while Commissioner Fast and O'Hare are much better at this than I am, I can understand turning to staff saying, well, how do we frame this? What does this mean? What's the wording on this? And so to separate that too much becomes a challenge. So that's the filter I have as we go forward on this conversation. And I'll just stop with one last observation. The more prescriptive we try to make the rules, the tighter the grip, the looser the hold. We end up losing, to Commissioner Allenbrand's perspective, that camaraderie of just being able to discuss and disagree agreeably. And I think that should be a rule, but that's my personal rule. And but have it out in the public domain so they understand that laws and rules are hard to make sometimes. And it's, what's the expression about you don't want to see how sausage your laws are made? And I get it. And it does become a challenge because what Commissioner Hanslick may think is perfectly reasonable and understandable, I may look at that and go, well, is that really what you meant? But if I can't talk to her about it, it just becomes, well, I'm not going to support it because I don't understand it. So I will stop with that. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think we can go into some deep theoretical conversations about debate within government and healthy policy level considerations. 2 points to your comments. One, I think Chief Counsel had already indicated that the intent was to say board priorities as opposed to strategic plan, and that could be amended. The second one is, while I agree that there's any items infinitum that we could potentially discuss at any level of government, there is a streamlining process that would allow the board to consider those items which meet the priorities of the board or of the legislature. Anybody can submit a bill in the legislature. That doesn't mean every one of them gets a hearing. And so they would be there the entire year if that was the case, and that probably still wouldn't even be enough time. So I think there has to be somewhat of a process by which we can decide what's important to us and we need to balance that with the opportunity for healthy debate. Commissioner Myers?
Mr. Chairman, may I, since it was directed to me, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that when there's a point of debate, your response to me and others has been that it's theoretical. I would submit to you that these are policy debates, and to dismiss it as theoretical is not necessarily on point and could be interpreted as being dismissive. So
Well, I apologize for for the characterization if it was seemed as dismissive. By theoretical, I meant that it was debating or discussing more the essence of debate in government as opposed to the structure of the current rules being submitted. So to the extent that it was taken as dismissive, I apologize. Commissioner
apology
Myers.
accepted.
Thank you, Chair. I lean towards option 2 because I believe it includes some of those initial steps that I think is important. And because you can go round and round if we just start bringing up items, during our commission comments and wanting to bring up some of these pop-up agenda items, if you want to call them pop-up or whatever. And from my perspective, I don't mind being told no. I don't like it sometimes. Most of the time, I don't like being told no, but I accept it. I understand there's times where I'm going to be told no. And I would ask a reason, and I would expect to be given a reason, and I think that would be provided. But that's why I think communication is so important in this aspect, and doing it prior to with the chair, I think is the best way to go about it without spending a lot of time commitment on the dais that we don't need to be spending in a lot of situations. So that's kind of where I kind of lean towards that communication with the chair. Again, getting response and then providing information to the full board in order to bring it to a meeting and then discuss adding it to the agenda and finalizing whether it's going to be added or not.
Commissioner Allen Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I promise this is the last time I'm speaking. So I'm leaning for option 2 as well. And, before I had a meeting with before I ran for office, so I met with a former mayor, and I studied, the past commission meetings, and there was always somebody that was in, that you're going to have people that are not going to agree. So there's just different personalities, and and that's okay. I don't want to, Commissioner Fass, I guess I don't understand, because the county manager is in charge of the staff and the building, so to speak, and then she has other people, and I've enjoyed the art. But whenever I've always had a suggestion, I've always went to the county manager. She comes in, we have time to talk, or I'll schedule it with her. So I wouldn't paint the room pink, but I've had, several times where I've had suggestions, and I've talked to the county manager, and if she wasn't here, I'd probably go to Julie, but is it okay if I talk to the staff about hanging the pictures? And I've been given direction. The only direction I've been told no so far, it wasn't really a hard no, but I wanted to redo the beverage bar out there, so, former Lifetime. So I just felt like that's the process. So I guess I don't understand bringing the food, because I've gone to Joe after talking to the county manager about food, different options for foods down below too, the courthouse. So I'm not sure what that has to do with bringing it forward.
Can I answer that?
Please go ahead.
Since,
What is?
well, many times, I last year talked to her 3 times about changing the budget retreat, and I've every year told, we have 30 minutes to discuss during the budget retreat. But I think she's in a bad position, because then often the response is, well, talk to your colleagues. Your colleagues have a different opinion than you do. I think you need to bring, that is really a classic example. She can't just put in a housing coordinator position in the budget last year. She couldn't just put in a contract for federal government relations. That's a policy direction. And so that's why, she can't just, when I say, Penny, I want a new position here, she can't just do that. It takes our direction. That's what we're for. She works for all of us. She just doesn't work for you.
Well, no, she doesn't just work. I just
don't-
want to clarify, we spent almost over 2 years in a committee meeting, subcommittee meeting on housing, talking about housing coordinator, and then it
And I
came
brought it,
forward.
and I brought it to
Well, I
her,
thought we
then I
did,
brought
but
it
that's
to Lori, then
okay,
I
I'm
brought it
just-
to you,
Commissioners,
and
can
then
we
I
go
brought
one
it
at a
to you.
time?
Yeah, sorry.
You're
So
fine.
anyway, I didn't know if I was doing
Well, you maybe have more power than I do. I don't know.
I don't think anybody has any
You
more
can
power.
go to the
Thank
manager
you.
and she does.
Thank you, Commissioners. Commissioner O'Hare, did you have a comment?
Option 2 is fine as long as we take out number 3, because I don't think that we need to, I don't think that we need to have veto power over what we're bringing up. Obviously, they unreasonably interferes with the ability of the county to carry out its administrative operations and duty. That could be slammed on anything. I think that you give the commissioners the courtesy to know that whatever we're going to bring up pertains to county business. Conflicts with law, well, if it conflicts with law, it's not going to go anywhere anyway. We're not looking at things that have been previously voted on. I don't want to have things that are so constricted. The chief legal counsel, she can put an item on the agenda with no notification, and yet we are the elected officials that are representing 100,000 people, and we're treated like kindergartners. I resent it. I think that we need to have respect for each other, and I respect that we have differences of opinions, and that is fine. And this attitude that I have found is like, well, do it off the dais. Let's have all these conversations off the dais. No, we need to have the debate in open session. And so if we can do option 2, and I just think that this veto power is absolutely unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And so I would make a motion that we go with option 2.
Commissioner, hold on. Before we take motions, Ms. Trent.
Chair and Commissioner, so this is a CAL, so you would direct staff.
Okay.
Right.
to Bring option 2 back?
And
Well,
with-
hold on.
Yes.
And so-
Direct staff. I'm making a motion to direct staff.
We're not making motions at this time. We're having an opportunity for everybody to have comment on this. So if you want to make comment, continue to make a comment.
I would like to make a motion.
It's out of order.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chief Legal Counsel, is that out of order?
Well, Chair is leading the meeting, so if the chair does not want to proceed with this at this point, but we do need some action to give me direction what to bring forward at a future.
And we have the opportunity to discuss after the motion's on the floor, correct?
You will have an opportunity to discuss after the motion's on the floor. Thank you. Commissioner Myers.
So I see these items in number 3 as being protections for us.
Right.
And so I don't mind, because that's going to be some of the answers sometimes to me hearing the word no. And I can accept that. And I might not like it again, but I can accept it.
Okay. Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Myers. I mean, we could talk about changing number 3 a little bit if people are uncomfortable with certain wording, but to me, this is just kind of setting some guardrails so that we don't take action on something and then later find out that it's not, we don't have the legal authority to do that, and then we end up with a lawsuit or something else that we really don't want. I'd rather have that ahead of time. So I think I think 3 should remain.
Commissioner Ashcraft,
Mr. Chairman, may I ask for some clarifications related to number 3?
please.
Okay. Counselor, under, I guess it's paragraph 2, I'm looking at the red-lined document. There's a sentence that says, once the written request is determined to be sufficient and appropriate, who makes that determination?
That would go over to paragraph 3. And paragraph 3 would be construed to look, you're looking at it two ways. One, the clerk has received those questions answered, meaning the impact to staff, that some communication has been made to the county manager or others to determine the impact to staff to bring it forward in the future, like what would be involved. And then,
So the who is the chair and council?
yeah, chair would be making that in consultation with me.
Okay, very
And
good.
then basically just looking to make sure you've complied with this section of the
Okay,
rules
and then
of
under
order.
3C,
Correct.
unreasonable interference, how are we defining unreasonable?
Unreasonable means that it is, I'd have to get an example of what that would mean, but somehow that it would interfere what's being proposed with the operations of county government. So it wouldn't be reasonable to bring it forward because it's unreasonable and would it somehow interfere with operations, with what we currently
But isn't any
have.
action that the commission take, doesn't it interfere? Any action the commission ever takes, doesn't it interfere?
Not necessarily, no.
I mean, it either promotes or changes.
You can
No?
collaborate, you could
Next question, if I
complement
could.
county operations. There's a lot of things that can improve. Interfere means that you are, if you're saying we are no longer to do snow removal unless you have 10 inches of snow, that would interfere with the operations of us, even employees getting out to
Very good.
come to work.
But it
and
says
so forth.
unreasonably, that's
Yeah,
why I was
that's unreasonable.
seeking. Okay, next question, under D, has been previously voted on, and that would mean even if new information was presented, it would exclude it?
Yes, once an item is within a seated council and you have made a determination on an issue, it can't be brought back. Now, if there's something on that particular item, if there's something that permits it to be reviewed again that's unique, then that can be brought back. But if it's exactly on point and reconsideration, you cannot.
Reconsideration, I
Yeah.
understand that. Very. And finally, G, there has been any performance on a contract. Does that include the development of contracts?
Potentially, if you have, if you're wanting to terminate a contract where we've already started performance, there would have to be something legally that would be, that we would want them to stop performing. And so that's where we get into analyzing this to make sure that you're just not wanting that contract with a vendor because you didn't like the vendor and their connections to somewhere to cancel the contract. And this would be more, if that performance is going, we can't do it. But if there's something legally that they violated in a contract, then that, of course, can be brought back for a breach. But what we don't want is just considering items that aren't actual breaches of contract when I have a vendor who's performing a contract.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Fast.
So, under Robert's rules, the agenda can be changed either by 2/3 vote or a vote of the majority of the entire membership or a vote by unanimous consent. So we will no longer, this body can no longer amend the agenda?
No, that's still separate
So,
from this. This is adding items for the agenda. Amending the agenda would be to add, to move things around if you wanted to, but the chair determines that. But this, you still would be able, this is just to add an item for
So I could
future
still bring
consideration.
forth on the
Yeah.
day of the meeting an
If it's
agenda item that I would want added, right?
Right. But generally, we have other rules that complement that it has to be given advance notice, the chair is advised, but yes, that's how we do it in Johnson County. Robert's rules are different.
Thank you.
The rules of order, the way that operationally Johnson County has operated is different. They deviated from that rule, but you are correct, that is the rule. But we do it different in Johnson County.
Okay, everybody's had two opportunities here, I think, to discuss this. I think there has been, at least, I see a potential consensus around number 2, so I'll move to direct staff to bring back language and a proposed amendment to our rules of order incorporating those points in number 2.
Second, Hanslick.
Okay, and Commissioner O'Hara wanted to propose an amendment. We'll allow her to do that.
Yes, the amendment is that to delete Section 3, all of those issues would have to be, it is just the way that the county business has to go forward, and it does not need to be written out.
Thank you.
To give the chair and the chief of staff veto power over what's going to be brought forward. So, yes, I make an amendment to delete Section 3.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Of course. Questions or comments on that? Commissioner
Chair.
Allenbrand? I'm
I
sorry.
have could I rule of order of that? Was her whole statement the motion because she expanded on that?
No, just a friendly amendment is, if it's okay with Commissioner O'Hara,
Just to delete Section 3.
just to delete Section 3, or number 3 from the motion to direct staff.
Yes.
Correct?
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Allenbrand?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I can't support this, and I want you to know why, because I feel like you help protect me as long as I'm abiding, so I don't have my own personal legal advice, so I need to know if there are conflicts with the law. I need to know those things, so I feel like I need to leave that in, so I can't support that.
Okay. All right, we've had discussion on this. We understand this is a vote on the amendment to the direction. So this is Commissioner O'Hara's amendment. Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Fast.
Yes.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, no.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, no.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, no.
And Chairman Kelly.
No, 3 votes in favor, 4 against. Is that consistent with your count?
That's correct.
To the original direction to staff then. Commissioner Ashcraft?
Clarification, there was some discussion about clarifying the verbiage under point 1. Is that still on the table?
The clarifying the verbiage under point.
Under strategic objective, what that means?
Right, I think That's on the table. My intent was per chief counsel to change that to board priorities. Okay, and so I appreciate you clarifying that direction. So with no further questions or comments, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion for direction to staff.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
No.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Kelly.
Aye, 6 votes in favor, 1 against. Is that consistent with your count?
That's correct.
Thank you. Ms. Trent, on to the second part.
So the other item is members requesting information not readily available. The added language, if we were changing the previous one as to adding an item agenda, how we would bring on if you wanted information that was not readily available. Readily available is the term of art that is utilized as opposed to a 4-hour rule or putting it into so many minutes of staff time. Essentially, the process as it stands and would remain is that a member of the commission can request information that's readily available from staff or county manager. If it's not readily available, then you can ask the manager, and the manager's office or staff may provide it. Readily available means that it's something that, I can print it from a printout or able to obtain it to give to the commissioner for their use. If it's something that you're requesting information that's going to take staff time in order to acquire that information, to go research and to bring that back, that would need to go through and be a vote of the board. And so what would be is if we would follow the process in option 2 that you brought forward, that would be the way. You can go to the chair, ask for permission. If it's not, then you can bring it to the board, bring it up in your comments, or you could submit in writing to bring it forward. That is not different than what you've been doing now. It's the same process. Right now, you just bring an email. You were formally bringing an email forward, putting it on, and going through that process. So that's what we're doing. Some commissioners are just using Quora, so we just do Quora. So usually, we're pretty flexible in getting what you need as staff. I don't think there has been a problem with this at all that I can see. So I don't envision by this change it would create a problem.
Thank you. Commissioner Fast?
So the 4-hour rule, that's no longer?
Yes, we got away from a number, so it's just if it's available or not. And if it's not available and we have to take staff time to go research an issue. I think the last one we had was Commissioner O'Hara requested some information on TIF district, and that was approved. That took staff time to go research that, to gather that information. That was an appropriate thing to being brought onto the floor for consideration of the board. So that was appropriate. And the way that was handled was in line with the rules. And so we didn't have a problem with this, other than we didn't know the impact to the staff. And that was the discussion point which brought us all here today.
Yes, I will add to that now that, excuse me, that the procedure is in place, it doesn't take much staff time to update it on an annual basis. But that information had never been available. And so I think that it was very valuable for the community to understand it. So what's going to change? How am I going to be constricted on getting information?
Chair and
Go ahead,
Commissioner,
Mr.
I don't believe we've been restricting you
No,
on information.
that's what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
It would
Is there
continue
any-
the same
So basically, we're
process,
just
yeah.
going to continue as procedurally.
But you don't need to email the clerk, you're emailing the clerk like you did in the last, but there's not these timelines, and you're just saying why you need it. I think it's actually easier for that request.
Agreed.
And you've been doing Quora too, so we've been responding to that
Okay,
too.
thank you.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So who defines if something is readily available? Is it county manager?
Yes, because if a staff member says, hey, you go to a staff or the county manager and they say, hey, this is going to take staff time to do, the county manager then can make a decision, hey, I think, we can get that for you, that's not a problem. If it is, then we would bring that to the board.
Okay, well, and no reflection on the current manager, but how do commissioners respond if they feel there is a bias in terms of the availability and generation of information by the commissioner, or from a commissioner by the county manager?
You would have to ask each other. I haven't seen an issue.
I'm not saying that there is, but I'm just wondering
Right.
what would be the process?
They could bring the item
Yeah.
through the process that we
Right.
just.
Yeah, the
directed
process,
staff.
the option 2 process. And actually, I think it'll make it easier, but it just, this clause has not created a problem, but it changes because we changed the process, which was more involved.
Well, the potential concern is putting the county manager in a place where there are concerns about why the decision was made or not made to generate information requested by a commissioner. How does the county manager deal with that?
That's up to the county manager and her operation of the county.
And whether or not the information is readily
Yeah.
available.
It's
Ms.
somewhat-
Postock-Ferguson, did
It's
you want to
somewhat in
address
place now because
Right.
by the home rule charter, it's, a decision of whether it's a part of the matter of the normal course of business. However, if there's a question, I'll probably just bring it to the board.
All right. Commissioner Hanslick?
Thank you. Just to clarify, do we need to take action to direct the staff to put the suggested language that's on page 10 of the presentation? I just want to clarify.
Yes, I
Okay.
would need to direct staff, because I need to revise this as a result of the other paragraph being
Well,
revised.
I'm glad to do that if we're at a point to do that I move to direct staff to bring back to the board the language as reflected on page 10 of the presentation in regard to member requesting information not readily available.
Alan Brand, second.
Moved by Hanslick, seconded by Allenbrand. Seeing no further discussion, will the clerk call the roll, please?
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
No.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Alan Brand, aye.
And Chairman Kelly.
Aye, 6 votes in favor, 1 against. Is that consistent with your count?
That's correct.
Okay, and part 3, please.
Okay, and moving on, this next section, as I was directed on August 3rd, was to bring back a definition of attorney-client privilege. In the proposed language that I put forward, I did not define it because I think a better way would just to cite to the state statutes. Basically, there are 2 state statutes that come into play about what is attorney-client privilege in Kansas. And without reading that to you for sake of time, it gets into communication, could be advice from the attorney in the course of representing a client. The difference is we think of attorney-client privilege like a law firm. We're in-house counsel representing you as a board and individually in your capacity as a board. So that any communications that we're providing to you under privilege, because we're giving you legal advice, Kansas would interpret that to be attorney-client privilege. However, with that said, when we're emailing and talking to you, we pretty much, or at least I know I am and my staff, we tell you when it's privileged material. Not everything that we're talking with you, because we also serve as part of the business of the county. So when we're in that business mode of operation, that is public information. It's when it's privileged dealing with some item, usually we see it with liability, different items of actions, that will become privileged. And that's the, when we will assert that privilege. In addition, we have work product and emails. There is a statute also in Kansas, 60-426A, that also outlines attorney-client privilege and the work product and the limitations on the waiver. Essentially, the proposed, and it goes into detail, so I'm just kind of rushing through. There's also case law that further elaborates when legal advice is sought. It could also be, I'm giving you legal advice, but it's you or the client as a board, waiving that advice has to be, and what is proposing, that a majority, or I think we put consensus of you. So the language that is being put forth, it was in your packet, was section 10 on executive session, and I added privileged information. And I placed it in your rules of order under executive session. But it also talks about confidentiality. And basically that you all agree that when you go into topics that are discussed in executive, that they're to remain confidential and should not be disclosed for any reason except as required by law. For instance, we had a coma violation allegation, so we had to disclose what was discussed in executive session, or that there is an express consent of the entire board. So if you were to both all come forward and say, or you voted on something, that would waive that privilege as a board and not just individually. What we have to worry about is right now is one person releases it, you've waiving the privilege and it's getting out, and that is a concern as a board. COMA doesn't address that. That has to be addressed under your rules of order. And so that's why this is being requested to be put in there. This is a item, and I just to put it in context, that many boards struggle with. It's not something new to Johnson County. I just think this is just a reminder of the confidentiality. And if there's any other question about that, just asking, I know Commissioner Hare will ask me, and I'll say, yeah, that's fine, release it. She double checks now, and I appreciate that because I think that's important. When I put generally attorney-client privilege, there's a reason that I put it up there. I find that there's advice. I would like to give you more privileged information because I feel that I represent the board and I want to make sure you're all getting the same information, but there's concerns when information's getting released that I don't feel I can give a free flow of information, and that limits my representation and ability to give it, so it's just not all to the chair, that it's going to all of you. So at this point, this is why I'm requesting this information. It also gets into confidentiality, so that you realize that when you receive an email or something, that when it's noted as attorney-client. I put the cites of the statutes so that would give a definition without getting into our rules and further elaborating. It is very hard to sit here and give you a hard-pressed definition of what is attorney-client privilege because technically it could be very broad. I'm not saying that. I'm trying to narrow this as much as I can, and I think that we've been doing that for you. That's all I have on that topic.
Thank you. Ms. Trent, questions or comments, Commissioner O'Hara?
So we're focusing on information that has been given to us in executive session, and that's a no-brainer. That confidentiality remains. That cannot be. That's not allowed, and I think that we all understand that. But I want to make sure that if I ask a question that has nothing to do with anything that has been in executive session, and then you send me, well, this is attorney-client privilege, and I'm going, well, why? Why would this be attorney-client privilege? So we're giving you the authority to determine what is attorney-client privilege? I mean, or is this specifically for items and issues that have been brought up in executive session?
It is expansive. It isn't just executive session. It also entails
Microphone.
items.
Microphone.
Oh, sorry. It involves also items outside of executive session. So if I email and you ask a question, and Commissioner, I don't always give things that it's attorney-client privilege. And honestly, it probably should be, but I don't, because I try to be, if it deals with liability, generally has been my area, and or potential liability to the county as a result of actions, I put attorney-client privilege. If we've been sued and I'm giving you information about a lawsuit and giving you specifics of divulging what this means, that's attorney-client privilege.
Right, but that would be something that would have been presented to us in executive session.
Not necessarily. I've had opportunities, especially when we were going through in 21, 2021, when I first started, we had litigation over COVID. We had various things. I was trying to push it out to you before we had a meeting so that you were aware of items that were occurring. I think that you've had oaths of office suits, you've had different things that have come forward, and I've tried to push it out as soon as possible in an attorney-client privileged email. So what I'm trying to do is to expand that. I do generally try to bring it into executive to follow up, but I try to get that information. My concern has been, and if you haven't noticed, I've done less because I'm worried about the dissemination of emails out there without some language of protecting that privilege I'm giving. And yes, I am an attorney, retained by you to give advice. So yes, legal advice goes both ways. I'm giving it to you. You confide in me and tell me things that I can't release. So yes, that is the key. But if the attorney-client privilege doesn't apply to staff who are not attorneys, it's only to attorneys. So that's why we have to be cautious, who has the privilege.
So if a commissioner feels like that this is information that should go out to public, but you have deemed that this is attorney-client privilege, what recourse does that commissioner have?
Great question. We could have a discussion about why you feel that way, and under this rule now, we would ask for consensus to release that information. And I could go into executive because it's privileged and confidential and discuss it, depending on what it is. I think I know what you're referring to, and that would be back in executive to discuss. And then if it was decided, then we would come out and vote to release that information.
I think I need to frame this question a little differently.
Okay, sorry.
If this is an individual commissioner asking a question, and it's I don't understand, because I understand that the confidentiality is on issues that is on the entire board. Instead, if I have a specific question on a specific item, I'm just trying to make sure that individual commissioners are not put in a straitjacket of not being able to communicate information that is not brought forward in an executive session.
Chair and Commissioner, you've asked me, can I release this? And I didn't have attorney-client, and you questioned it, and I said, yeah, you can, yes, I've given you. So I've been really understanding your need to get information out to your constituents and what is, but there's a line, and when we are exposing the county to liability by actions, and if I speak to a commissioner and I say, hey, I'm a little bit concerned about something, that's privilege material. And I'm not going to be putting it out there. And sometimes I don't even share it with the entire board because it's confidential, because it affects the board. I'm not here to play gotcha. I'm just trying to make sure that we're safe as a county from liability. And usually people just don't know.
So, Ms. Trent, is it fair to say that sometimes a commissioner could ask for information, but that information could affect the entire board and the attorney-client privilege that is to all of us, even if it's a one-on-one communication?
Right. And I don't share, I do not always share. Like, I've had conflict of interest inquiries confidentially to understand, and I will have those dialogues with an individual.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I thought you were going to where I was going to ask this question, and if you were, and I didn't understand, please forgive me. I'm a little bit confused about your relationship to us as a board and then us individually. Less confused in terms of us as a board. I get that, but if I asked you something that is sensitive, privileged, then why would you not respond, I will be glad to talk to you about this in executive session with the entire board, rather than use the umbrella of executive privilege with the individual at that time?
I have not been asked of you of those questions. Usually, the questions I'm receiving one-on-one are about conflicts, something that arose pertaining to that commissioner, legally how that affects the board. So I answer that privately to that commissioner.
Okay.
If it involves the board, I do take it, or I put it to all of you
So
under
fair-
attorney-client.
Fair enough. Then if you were, can I say, consulting with me or whatever
Right.
the term is, with me individually, and I may have a false understanding, I thought as an individual, then I had the ability or the right then to express that outside of the privilege to whoever I felt was necessary. Are you saying that's not the case?
Let me clarify. This rule is saying now moving forward that if it's to you individually, this is a difficult one, if I understand your question, because I know what some of the questions that have been asked of me individually.
Well, you said conflict of interest. I mean,
Let's do conflict of interest. That's an easy one. So with conflict of interest, if someone comes to me and inquires of it and provides me information, or they're reporting something to me of an ethical violation, or an ethical violation has been reported under the thing, I keep that confidential with that commissioner. If it becomes a board issue, then I will bring that to the board and would come back to executive session or send an email. But I would advise that commissioner before I would disclose that confidence.
And that's from your perspective, but me then, am I bound not to disclose that?
You can disclose it to whomever you want individually, if it's about you individually,
Okay,
if that makes sense.
that's what I was trying to get to, so
If it's
thank
you individually.
All right.
And I know what you're talking, individually, so it'd be an individual.
Okay. With that, I think we've been around the road here. I'd move that we direct staff to include the proposed language to Article 5, Section 10 of our amended Rules of Order. Is there a second?
Second, Hanslick.
Commissioner O'Hara?
I think that we need to include this clarification that if it's on an individual,
Okay.
so I want to amend it to make,
I know what
you
you're,
understand what?
yes.
I wanted to amend this, and I'll try to be very succinct, Linda.
We're just directing her to.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, these are not votes.
Yeah,
Okay, so I want that
Correcting me.
language included.
okay. I know what you're thinking.
Very good.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Fast,
Aye.
Commissioner Myers,
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara,
With the amendment, yes.
Commissioner Hanslick,
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft,
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand,
Allenbrand, aye.
and Chair Kelly.
Aye, 7 votes in favor, none against. Is that consistent with your count?
That's correct.
Okay, that's all for the Committee of the Whole.
Now, Mr. Chairman, Section 9, has that been covered? The red line copy under Section 9, was that covered with one of these
Yeah, I
votes?
think we did that,
I think that was covered under option 2, right?
right.
Okay, thank you.
So when you do option 2, I'll pull
Okay,
that
I
over.
apologize.
No problem. All right, when the Committee of the Whole is then adjourned, we'll take a 5-minute and we'll finish with agenda review. Thank you.